Inside Rikers Island, New York's most infamous prison, the Masterminds escaped the impossible escape. The alarms wouldn't stop. Guards sprinted down the corridors, shouting orders, slamming every door they passed. But it was too late. Cell 214B, the one no one was ever supposed to leave, was empty. And lying on the bed, in place of the inmate, sat a single chess piece. The Black King. Marcus Reed had done the impossible. He had escaped from Rikers Island. How he did it, that's where our story begins. The beginning of a legend. Marcus Reed wasn't born a criminal. He was born curious. A tech prodigy from Brooklyn, he spent his childhood taking things apart. Radios, old computers, even traffic lights. By the time he was 30, he was a respected cybersecurity consultant. But curiosity led him one step too far. He found a security flaw inside a Manhattan hedge fund's database, a digital backdoor that no one else had noticed. He told himself it was just an experiment, a harmless test. But when millions suddenly disappeared and the FBI traced the breach to his laptop, curiosity turned into a 20-year prison sentence. And that's how Marcus Reed, the quiet genius, ended up on Rikers Island. From the moment he stepped through those gates, he realized Rikers wasn't a prison. It was a living machine, loud, unpredictable, and dangerous. He didn't fight it. He studied it. He learned the rhythms of the guards' shifts. He memorized which lights flickered in which hallway. He even timed how long each cell door took to lock. Where others saw chaos, Marcus saw patterns. And patterns meant opportunity. One day in the yard, an old inmate named Doc challenged him to a game of chess. They played using pieces made from bottle caps and bolts, and by the third game, Doc realized Marcus wasn't just good. He was frighteningly strategic. That's when Doc leaned in and said, "If you can win in here, you can win anywhere, even against Rikers itself." Marcus didn't respond, but something shifted inside him. From that day forward, he wasn't just serving time. He was collecting information. Every guard rotation, every power surge, every forgotten maintenance tunnel. By the time 6 months had passed, Marcus had memorized the prison's pulse. And in his mind, the board was set. Rikers Island thought it was unbreakable. But Marcus Reed was about to prove that even the strongest walls fall if you know exactly where to make the first move. A prison built like a maze. Rikers Island wasn't just a prison. It was a maze made of fear, concrete, and secrets. 10 different facilities, thousands of inmates, hundreds of guards, and only one bridge connecting it to the outside world. Most men inside dreamed of surviving another day. Marcus dreamed of understanding the place. Every morning, he walked the same hallway to the mess hall. Same cracked tiles, same buzz of flickering lights. But he paid attention to the details no one else noticed. A blind camera angle here, a rusted lock there, a vent that blew cold air from somewhere it shouldn't. He didn't talk much, but word spread quickly. The computer guy could fix anything. A guard handed him a broken radio one day. Marcus fixed it within 10 minutes. A week later, another guard brought him a busted wristwatch. With every repair, Marcus gained something more valuable than money: trust. Soon, he had access to places no normal inmate ever saw. The guard's office, the maintenance shed, even the generator room. And he studied it all. At night, he'd replay everything in his head like a simulation. The prison's routines ran like clockwork, except when the power flickered. When the storm winds hit the island, the backup systems kicked in, but not all at once. There was always a 10-second delay before the emergency lights came on. 10 seconds of total darkness. That's all he would ever need. Doc saw the change in him. "You're planning something," he said one night during chess. Marcus moved his knight forward, slow and calm. "Just thinking," he replied. Doc smiled. "That's what every man says before he disappears." Marcus didn't answer. But inside, his plan was already alive, growing like a code only he could read. He'd figured out how the electricity flowed through the blocks, where the generators connected, and how to trigger a short circuit without setting off the main alarm. Now, he just needed a reason for the lights to go out. Weeks later, fate gave him one. The prison's old power grid started to fail under heavy rain. Transformers sparked. Guards cursed under their breath, talking about how the system was ancient and overdue for repairs. Marcus listened carefully. Repairs meant maintenance. Maintenance meant movement. And movement meant opportunity. When he got back to his cell, he picked up the Black King from his chessboard, turned it over in his hand, and whispered to himself, Even kings fall when the board collapses. That night, he stared at the ceiling, counting the seconds between each flicker of light. He wasn't just waiting anymore. He was calculating. And when the next storm came, and the island went dark, Marcus Reed would make his move. The master plan begins. The storm hit harder than anyone expected. Dark clouds rolled over New York City, and by midnight, Rikers Island was shaking under the wind. Marcus Reed sat on the edge of his bunk, calm as stone. He'd been waiting for this night. For months, every move he made had built toward this moment. Every chess game with Doc wasn't just a game. It was practice for timing, for patience, for control. Every tool he repaired, every favor he earned, every piece of information he collected, it was all part of one plan. A plan that had no room for mistakes. It started 3 days earlier, when Marcus fixed a guard's portable radio. While working on it, he quietly swapped a fuse, a tiny piece that would overheat under heavy electrical load. That fuse wasn't just going to break the radio. It was going to start a chain reaction. He'd calculated that if the fuse burned out during a storm, it would short the entire circuit connected to the control room lights. That meant cameras, door panels, and internal locks would all reset at once. Not for long, maybe 30 seconds, but 30 seconds on Rikers Island was eternity. Doc was the only one who suspected what Marcus was doing. He didn't ask for details. He just gave a quiet nod one night and said, "Every man's got a breaking point. Just make sure yours doesn't break the wrong way." Marcus smiled faintly. "You ever play chess without a board?" Doc laughed. "That's the only kind that counts." By the evening of the storm, everything was in motion. The air smelled of salt and electricity. Guards moved faster, shouting orders to secure the blocks before the power lines went. Marcus watched their patterns like a scientist. 9:42 p.m., lightning flashed over the East River. 9:45, the first siren wailed in the distance. 9:47, the power dipped for half a second, then steadied again. That's when Marcus slipped a folded note under Doc's chessboard. It had only one sentence written on it. "Checkmate comes in the dark." At exactly 10:06 p.m., the transformer blew. The lights went out across half the prison. Guards yelled. Inmates cheered. Chaos erupted. Marcus moved. He slid a thin strip of metal, hidden behind his mattress, into the cell door's manual latch. He'd practiced this 100 times in his head. 3 clicks. A soft pull. The door opened. He didn't run. He walked, steady and silent, through the shadowed corridor toward the service hallway he'd studied for months. Behind him, alarms started to flicker. Ahead, he saw the small, rusted panel that led to the old maintenance tunnel, the forgotten path from Chapter 1. He pried it open and slipped inside, heart steady, breathing even. For the first time in 2 years, Marcus Reed was off the grid. Inside the tunnel, the sound of chaos faded. Only the echo of dripping water remained. He crawled forward slowly, feeling the walls, counting distance in his head. This wasn't luck. This was math. Every move, every second, calculated. And when he reached the end of the tunnel, he looked up and saw a steel grate above him. Through it, faint light flickered. The dock area where supply boats unloaded shipments for the kitchen. Freedom was just 10 feet above him. But that's when he heard something he didn't plan for. Footsteps. 2 voices. Guards. They were close. Marcus froze. He couldn't go back. He couldn't move forward. The entire plan, months in the making, hung on one breath. The blackout. Marcus froze beneath the dock. 2 guards stood just a few feet above him, their flashlights cutting through the rain. He could hear the hum of their radios, the metallic jingle of keys. If either one looked down through the grate, it would be over. He stayed perfectly still, pressed against the cold tunnel wall. Every second stretched longer than the last. One of the guards cursed about the blackout. The other said the storm was causing chaos all over the island. Alarms going off, doors jammed, phones dead. Marcus listened carefully. That meant the power reset had worked exactly as planned. When their voices finally faded into the distance, he exhaled slowly. He wasn't safe, not yet. But for the first time since his arrest, Marcus Reed wasn't trapped behind a door. He pushed the grate open just enough to see outside. Rain poured hard over the loading dock. Crates, forklifts, and stacks of supply boxes were scattered under dim emergency lights. It was perfect cover. Marcus climbed up, moving between shadows until he reached an old supply truck backed up near the dock. Its back doors were unlocked. Inside were bags of frozen vegetables and cardboard boxes. He crawled in, closed the door, and buried himself under the supplies. Minutes later, the truck engine started. It rumbled forward, rolling toward the checkpoint at the far end of Rikers Island, the only road that led to the bridge. Marcus didn't move. He counted the bumps, memorizing every sound. When the truck finally stopped, he heard voices again, guards inspecting it before clearing it to leave. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. One wrong noise, and he'd be done. After what felt like forever, the engine roared again. The truck began crossing the bridge. Marcus could hardly believe it. He was off the island. But freedom wasn't a straight line. He still had to disappear in a city crawling with police, and by morning, every news station would be blasting his name across the country. He couldn't stay hidden forever. He needed one last move. An hour later, the truck stopped in a warehouse lot in Queens. Marcus waited until the driver stepped out. Then he slipped from the back, soaking wet and silent, and vanished into the shadows of the city. Behind him, sirens wailed faintly across the East River. Rikers Island was in lockdown. They had found his empty cell, and the Black King on his pillow. By sunrise, Marcus Reed's name was everywhere. Computer genius escapes Rikers. NYC on high alert. Authorities puzzled by prison break. The city was hunting a ghost. But Marcus wasn't running for chaos. He was chasing something else, something personal, something that had started long before Rikers Island. And as the rain eased over the skyline, he disappeared into the crowd, face hidden under a hood, a small chess piece clenched in his fist. The Black King. His next move was just beginning. The ghost in the city New York never sleeps. And that night, neither did the city's police. Helicopters circled over the East River. News vans lined the Queens shoreline. Every officer in the 5 boroughs had one order: find Marcus Reed. But by the time the first search teams reached the bridge, Marcus was already gone. He moved through the rain-soaked streets like a shadow, calm, deliberate, invisible. He'd memorized the city years ago during his tech career. Now, those same maps in his head guided his every step. He knew which alleys had working cameras, which subway stations didn't. He avoided main streets and stayed close to construction zones, where cameras were covered in dust and half unplugged. For hours, he walked without stopping. He didn't run. Running drew eyes. By dawn, he reached an old electronics repair shop in Long Island City, a place he used to visit for spare circuit parts. The owner, an older man named Jay, had once called Marcus the kid who could fix anything. Marcus knocked quietly on the side door. When Jay opened it, his eyes widened. "You're supposed to be in prison," he whispered. Marcus gave a faint smile. "I was. Now I'm in a hurry." Jay hesitated. Then, with a sigh, he stepped aside. "Get in before someone sees you." Inside, the shop smelled like solder and dust. Old monitors glowed faintly in the dark. Marcus went straight to work, using spare components to piece together a makeshift computer. He didn't need the internet. He just needed access to data, to time, to control. He used it to wipe traces of his identity, deleted old files, rerouted social security entries, even shut down 2 inactive accounts the prison system still had under his name. By the time the sun rose, Marcus Reed no longer existed in any public record. Across the city, detectives were piecing together what happened. Cameras showed the blackout. Maintenance reports matched Marcus's work shifts. And on one grainy frame from the dock, they caught a silhouette, small, fast, moving toward the supply trucks. "That's him," one officer said. "He planned this for months." The lead investigator, Detective Karen Holt, frowned. She'd studied Marcus's file for hours, his intelligence, his calm, his precision. "This wasn't just an escape," she said quietly. "This was a test. He's seeing if we can keep up." Meanwhile, Marcus sat in the corner of the repair shop, staring at a cracked computer screen. He had no family left, no one to trust. But he wasn't running just to be free. There was something he'd hidden before his arrest, something powerful enough to bring him down if anyone found it. And now that he was out, he had to get to it first. He opened a small metal box he'd carried out from Rikers. Inside was a folded slip of paper with coordinates. He whispered, "One last move." But outside, a police radio crackled nearby. Someone had tipped them off. Jay froze. "Marcus, they're close." Marcus stood, his face unreadable. Then he picked up the Black King from his pocket, placed it gently on the counter, and said, "Then it's time to change the board." He slipped out the back door, disappearing into the rising sunlight as police sirens closed in on the block. By the time they raided the shop, Marcus Reed was gone again. The ghost of Rikers had vanished into New York City. The hunt begins. Detective Karen Holt had been awake for 30 hours. Her office was a mess of coffee cups, photos, and printed maps of Rikers Island. Marcus Reed's escape wasn't supposed to be possible. Not there, not under her watch. But the more she studied the evidence, the clearer it became. This wasn't luck. It was logic. Precision. He'd left no fingerprints, no messages, no trail. Only a chess piece. Holt stared at it on her desk. The Black King recovered from his bunk. A challenge, she thought. A silent message. She called her team over. Reed doesn't make random moves. Everything he does connects to something bigger. Start checking his old contracts, his clients, anyone he ever worked with. I want to know what he was working on before the arrest. Across the city, Marcus moved carefully through the early morning crowds. He'd changed clothes twice already, from a maintenance jumpsuit to a delivery uniform, and now to a plain gray hoodie. The coordinates he carried led to an old data storage facility on the outskirts of Queens, a building that once belonged to a tech company he'd worked with years ago. It had shut down months before his arrest, but Marcus knew something the police didn't. Inside that building, hidden on a private server, was a copy of a program he'd created, the one that got him caught. But that program wasn't about stealing money. It was about something deeper. It could access any encrypted network in the city, not to take, but to expose. If it fell into the wrong hands, it could crash entire systems. Banks, hospitals, even law enforcement databases. And Marcus knew someone else was already looking for it. By noon, Detective Holt's team found their first break. An old colleague of Marcus's confirmed the rumors that before his arrest, Marcus had been working on a piece of software nicknamed Erebus. What did it do? Holt asked. The man hesitated. It could rewrite access permissions across multiple networks at once. Basically, open any digital door. Holt leaned forward. Could it break into Rikers Island's system? He nodded slowly. If someone knew how to trigger it remotely, yes. Holt sat back in silence. So that was it. Marcus hadn't escaped from Rikers. He'd escaped through it. Meanwhile, Marcus reached the old data facility. The windows were shattered, the sign half faded. He pried open a side door and slipped inside. Dust covered the floor. Rows of empty server racks lined the room. But in the far corner, he found what he was looking for, a locked steel cabinet still powered by a flickering backup light. He entered a long-forgotten password sequence on the panel. The lock clicked open. Inside were two small drives. Only one of them contained the real Erebus code. The other was bait, something he'd planted long ago, in case anyone else ever came searching. He grabbed both. As he stepped outside, rain began to fall again. Light, steady, familiar. Across the street, a black car slowed down. Marcus froze for half a second. Then he saw her, Detective Holt, standing beside the car, watching him. They locked eyes. No words. No movement. Just silence and recognition. Then Marcus turned and ran. Holt shouted to her team. He's here. Move. He darted into an alley, slipping through a maze of scaffolding and broken fences. Holt followed close behind, her radio blaring updates. But Marcus knew this city better than anyone. He cut left, climbed a service ladder, and vanished onto a rooftop just as sirens flooded the street below. By the time Holt reached the alley, he was gone. Again. That night, Marcus sat on a rooftop overlooking Manhattan. He placed the two drives beside him, one real, one fake, and stared at the glowing skyline. He whispered to himself, "You can't hunt a ghost if the ghost writes the map." Below, the city pulsed with life. Above, thunder rolled in once more. The game between the mastermind and the detective had just begun. The code of Erebus rain pounded against the glass towers of Manhattan. The city glowed beneath storm clouds, a million lights flickering like neurons in a giant brain. And somewhere above it all, Marcus Reed watched from the roof of an abandoned office tower. His hood was up, his face calm, his eyes locked on the skyline. The two drives sat beside him, one real, one fake. One could expose everything. The other could destroy it. Down below, Detective Karen Holt's voice echoed through her radio. "Units moving in. We've tracked his signal. He's using the rooftop access from the old MetroCorps building." Helicopters circled. Red and blue lights flashed against the rain. But Marcus wasn't running anymore. He plugged the real Erebus drive into a portable device he'd built from scraps. Lines of code scrolled across the screen. Fast, endless, alive. Then he whispered, "This isn't about escaping. It's about truth." He tapped one key. Immediately, hundreds of hidden files began uploading into the public web, encrypted reports, illegal data trades, secret surveillance logs. Everything the city had buried for years. In the command van below, Holt watched as her screens went wild. Systems are breaking, traffic cams, internal servers, even our comms. Her partner shouted, "He's dumping everything online." Holt grabbed her mic. "Read. Listen to me. Whatever you think you're doing, you'll destroy more than you save." Static. Then, a voice, quiet, calm, unmistakable. "You can't clean a system that's built on dirt, detective. You can only show people what's under it." The signal cut. Moments later, the building lights flickered. Power surged. And then, silence. When the task force finally reached the rooftop, the rain had stopped. The laptop was there, still humming softly. But Marcus Reed was gone. All they found was a single chess piece sitting on the edge of the ledge, the Black King, gleaming under a flash of lightning. Detective Holt picked it up and stared into the storm. No body, no trace, no sign of how he'd left. Only the echo of a ghost who'd outplayed the system. Days later, the leaks Marcus unleashed shook New York City. Politicians resigned. Security systems rebooted. And people everywhere whispered his name. Some called him a criminal. Others, a hero. But no one ever found him. Weeks turned into months. And then one morning, a new account appeared online, posting chess puzzles under the name Black_King. Each one signed the same way. Every system has a flaw. You just have to find it. Detective Holt stared at the post from her office. A faint smile crossed her face. "He's still out there," she whispered. "Still playing." And that was inside Rikers Island, the Mastermind's escape. Marcus Reed, the man who turned a prison into a chessboard and vanished into thin air. But the real question is, did he die that night? Or is the Black King still making moves? Chesspawn, if you think he's still out there, drop a detective mail sign in the comments below. If you think Holt finally caught him, hit that locked emoji. And don't forget, subscribe for the next chapter in the wild world of real-life escapes and criminal masterminds. Because the game? It's never over.